Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's OpenJ9 community call. We'll start off, as we always do, with an open discussion for anybody who'd like to bring up any topics around OpenJ9 or any particularly user-focused queries. As I mostly see the usual suspects on the discussion today, there may not be anything, but if anybody does have anything they'd like to bring up, we can start in there. All right, we don't have a lightning talk lined up for today. We should look at trying to line up a few more of those, and maybe publicize the schedule over the next few weeks. May want to reach out to some of the GC team and see if we can get something around some of the GC logs, or even some of the other cool features, maybe DDR, some quick examples there. So I think we have some content we could be pulling together. We just need to get people lined up to do it. So, all right. Let's start off with the milestone summary. Sorry, general business. I see somebody has added a milestone summary.
So that would be me. I thought, because we mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, I thought maybe it's worth it to have a very quick summary there. So for whoever wants to see the gory details, they'll be in the link. But long story short, we have 2 must-fix issues remaining, 3 must-fix issues remaining. So that would be a fix for DDR and another one for environment variable update. There are fixes in progress right now, and the ETA is the end of the week. And there is also a docs directory update, which will happen this week. So we're on our way to finishing this one. That's what I have for the milestone summary. Any questions? Okay, I'll take it as a no. Can I move on to the next topic?
Sounds good.
Yeah, so for the PRs, I got the numbers for the total. So we are very, very similar to last week. So we have 284 and 5 in progress, and similar to with the PRs. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that I would like to change the summary for next week and change the way I'll have like some sort of table with numbers so we can follow properly. Nothing else mentionable from my perspective on the queries.
Okay. Thanks, Irina.
Is anyone else mildly concerned at the number of old PRs we have sitting around in work in progress that don't seem to be getting very much attention right now? I was just briefly paging to the 4th page of pull requests, and there's quite a number of things listed as work in progress, some opened even just as we open sourced. I'm not sure any of them have seen updates recently. It was kind of a cross-section across the different components.
Well, my first priority right now is more the milestone, but that's a good point. But it's worth doing a sweep through those after we finish the milestone. Am I answering your question? I'm not sure. So yes, we should be concerned. It's a priority issue. We should get to it soon-ish. I can follow up in a week or a couple of weeks where we are on all of those.
I mean, if there are some that are obsolete and they're never going to be completed, we could see about closing them. If they really are work in progress and people just haven't had time to get back to them, what are we supposed to do? Do you think we should close those and reopen them when somebody has time to get back to it?
Well, I guess, is there value in like, for example, the oldest one that we've got was last touched in December of 2017. Other than to add some tags and a couple of references to it. I don't know if, I think it's Toby's pull request. Actually, I don't know if he's doing work on this. The branch has conflicts that have to be resolved. Is keeping that branch alive as an open pull request at the project valuable? If it's not being tested, it's not being changed, it's going to have to be rebased anyway. I'm just curious. I'm not I'm not saying we should get rid of them or do anything with them. I was just basically asking if this is the right thing for our project to be doing. Leaving these around for a long time. I mean, we went through a purge of issues at one point. I guess I'm wondering if
we went through a very small purge of issues, and there were a large number of concerns with that purge. So,
yeah, but I guess the concern for a pull request may not be quite as high, right? Like the issue, closing an issue because nobody's had time to work on the issue is one thing, because you close it and you kind of lose track of it. But presumably the person working on a pull request has an active branch. You don't lose any code. If it's tied to an issue, the issue is still there. It's just kind of the code's not ready to be merged yet. So what value are we getting out of a pull request that sits in that state for 5 months?
I think we get the same value out of that we do out of issues. Many things have pull requests that have been open for them, but there's no corresponding issue. I'm not arguing that we should keep some of these. I'm arguing that they need to be looked at individually and decisions need to be made.
Okay, I don't disagree with that perspective.
I'll take a note that we should be looking at old pull requests.
And I know on OMR I periodically go through, or periodically is not very frequently or not as frequently as I would like. I go walking through the old pull requests and basically ask people if there's value in keeping this around or if we can just resubmit when the code is ready. I haven't done that for OpenJ9 before. But.
Are there other areas of discussion that we should be looking at around issues and pull requests? All right, then just a reminder to all the committers to please take a look at issues tagged against their component and make sure anything relevant or tackleable by a beginner gets tagged that way or tagged as help wanted. Let's make it a little more approachable for new people to join the project. If nothing else, then let's move on to talk about machines.
Should we, I guess one follow-on question to that, do we have an easy link for people for newcomers to hit? I mean, I know there is a link that would pop up those kinds of issues. Is that link sort of front and center on the README? Maybe we could add that to the README as a, rather than ask them to figure out what the right label is to do the query to find the things that might be useful. I don't know, maybe we already have that. I haven't looked before I opened my mouth. Does anyone know?
I'm not aware of anything along those lines, but I think it's a great addition.
Okay.
Are you volunteering, Mark?
Well, I'm already dorking with the README for that other issue, so I guess it's not unreasonable for me to do it. And it's not urgent, so that's also a good reason for me to do it, maybe.
All right.
Sounds like a great idea.
All right.
All right, I've just reported that in the minutes.
So while Dan's typing, I'm not sure that we're actually going to have those two things in the milestone plan fixed this week. I think it's still undetermined if if they can be fixed this week or not.
For the two of them, the DDR fix in particular, does that only apply to Windows?
No, the current solution is going to affect DDR across the board.
Okay, so without this fix, though, DDR, it's only the Windows version that's affected?
That's correct.
We may want to look at, depending on how long this fix is going to take, we may need to ship without the DDR support on Windows.
Yeah, I mean, we could decide to ship without both of these things. I know we talked last time about needing the CC environment variable for adopt, but my understanding is it is possible to work around it. So the question is, how long do we want to hold up the release for these things?
Will not having DDR in place affect Eclipse's decision on whether to bundle things with the IDE?
I don't think so. I think Eclipse is looking for a JRE that is solid. DDR is more around our ability to debug issues when they crop up. So, I don't think they would see DDR as a blocker.
I don't think there's anything wrong with the blob. All the fixes are in the DDR code that could be fixed afterwards. So you could, if you had a core file from the 09 release and fixes that came in afterwards, I think you could still look at that core file.
When is it Eclipse are wanting to pick up this build from adopt? I'm just thinking that might be as much a factor into as whether we get the code up now and build as any.
I heard end of June mentioned, but I don't know if that's their delivery or a cut-off date for Eclipse.
Because there is going to be quite a bit of lead time to get this built at adopt and tested and proven to be good enough for Eclipse to pick up. And if the testing throws up anything that needs fixing, that's going to put even more pressure on.
It's a good point. We may want to look at seeing what we can do to pull this data in. The person who's been working on both of these particular fixes is local here in Ottawa, so we'll connect with them and see what we can do to pull those dates in, or whether we can push these out. In particular, the CC and CXX issue may need to be resolved for adopt, but we may be able to push the DDR fix out. I don't see Stuart on the call today, and he has been one of the main users for this environment variable updates. So we'll have to connect with him as well to find out how essential that is to adopt.
I believe Stuart's away for the next 3 days as well, based on a Slack comment.
Okay. So we will look to see if we can prioritize that one in particular.
One other factor to take into account is even if we did create the 09 release, I think there's still some problems that adopt in creating all the platform builds. There's like Windows is still under investigation, and I'm not sure.
The Windows builds are broken, and I believe it's machine configuration issue. It was discussed yesterday in the Adopt Infra call. So people are aware that it's an important issue to resolve, but I'm not actually sure who's working on it in the next day or two.
Yeah,
Stuart was.
My point is that if Adopt's not going to produce build, what's the point in finalizing the 09 release?
That's a good point.
Look, I think we should push on the environment variable issue first, so that we're ready whenever Adopt is able to produce those builds, and then we can look at pushing on the DDR issue and seeing if that will still be able to make the release.
Last time I looked, I think there was other platforms missing at Adopt as well. I'm not sure if that got resolved.
Missing as in not being run, or missing as in not showing up on the website?
Not showing up on the website in the nightly build list.
Mm-hmm. I think I'll have to take that one on, because that seems to be an ongoing issue.
Like there's no Z Linux builds for Java 8. And
and someone reported there's no Arch 64 or ARM 64 builds for 8, even though the builds run.
That only affects hotspot.
There's something wrong. Yes, I know, but it's all the same problem. There's something wrong with the release tool, where the builds get staged, but they're not being picked up and pushed. So I will see if I can dig into that.
All right, thank you, Shelley. Keep us in the loop, and if there's anything we can be doing to help make progress on that, definitely let us know.
Will do.
Working our way back to the agenda then. Looking at the machines list, I don't have an update on the UMB progress. Does anybody else on the call? Okay, so we'll continue to need to follow up with Charlie on that. In terms of the Windows configuration, I'm looking at the minutes here. The Adopt test machines are missing Sigwin. If I look down under the Windows machine config, Shelley, are you aware that's still the case?
Yeah, I flagged that yesterday at the infra call as my #1 priority. I really need that corrected, because we actually can't run testing in the other projects because of that being missing. I believe that Stuart was working with Cheng to make sure that the Windows machines were set up properly for build, but I think it all needs to be reflected into the Ansible scripts, and we need to make sure that those are run on all of the machines so that that's up to date. I don't think we're within a day of a solution, though. It didn't look like we were close to closing that. So I'm hoping that the fact that some of the infra team from Ottawa joined the call yesterday means that there will be some people working together on solving it. The problem is machines at OpenJ9 are configured differently than at Adopt at the moment.
All right. It's another reminder that we need to work together as a broader community to make sure we're all running the same scripts, the same identically configured machines.
Correct, and not have people say that they won't work together actively.
I certainly hope that's not occurring. Is there any other discussions that we need to have around machines and machine configuration? All right, then let's run through a list of the builds and packages. The JRE packages The last item I have here, Shelley, is that you were looking at testing the JRE packages after the release tool.
Yeah, Sophia's got that on her radar. We're looking at we're running OpenJDK regression tests on the JRE packages first, because there are groups of tests already pre-grouped that are called hotspot_JRE, lang_JRE, things that are designed to be able to run and test a JRE build and don't get caught up with stuff that's missing, like Java-C and other tools that aren't part of that package. So we do have to do some work with the build pipelines at Adopt to be able to make that happen, but I think we know how to proceed.
All right, for the large heap or the non-compressed refs packages, does anybody have an update on the status of those?
Yeah, so I pushed a change to the build pipelines at Adopt yesterday. The build pipelines picked up both the Win32 and x86 Linux large heap builds. The Win32 build is broken because of machine problems, so we've already talked about that today here. But the large heap build completed. OpenJDK regression tests were run on it. There are 15 failures, which we have to look at. The release tool has not published the large heap build, and I noticed that whoever put the build together is not identifying the tar gzip package differently, so it's probably going to overwrite the x86 Linux package. So I've made a change to that build, and hopefully we'll see a update in the next run of the pipeline, which is actually happening right now. So I'm working on that actively, and since I'm digging into the release tool for the large heap build right now, I will also look at why the other platforms aren't being pushed to the website.
Okay.
So it's sort of a all over the map learning lesson over here, because the changes have to happen in the OpenJDK build repo, in the OpenJDK test repo, and in the website backend repo and the API repo. So it might take a day or two for me to get some of this release stuff corrected once we understand it.
It's definitely appreciated that you're digging through this, Shelley.
I'll be happy to report when it's fixed.
In terms of, I'll skip Windows then because I think we've covered it a couple of times now. Just an update on Mac OS X. There's a growing and continued interest in Mac. So I'm working on dusting off my existing patches and getting them to a state they can be merged by the end of next week. I'm traveling next week, so it's a bit of an optimistic goal, but I'm hoping to make that. And we have another developer who has started looking at compiling the JIT on Mac, so that when we have the core of the runtime building there, the JIT will dovetail nicely into that. So there is progress starting to happen here again. Does anybody have an update on the ZOS build?
I wanted to ask Simon a question about it. If there is a build available to pick up from any Jenkins server in the world, let me know, because I have added support for the grinder jobs at all of our Jenkins servers, OpenJ9, Adopt, and internal. So that if I have a ZOS build, I should be able to start trying to run testing. I believe We're close to having a ZOS machine attached to the internal Jenkins build. And I'd like to try out some of the different types of testing on it. But at the open projects, I'm not sure, do we have ZOS machines attached already?
So we have a ZOS build, but internally in our organization, we don't have anything available in the open yet. And the code that is required to build it is also not yet in the open, so you might be a bit premature there.
Actually, I don't care if it's in the open. If you can point me to it, send me a direct message. I can start playing with it.
I sent you a link, Shelley.
What's that?
I sent you a link on Slack.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any further discussion on builds and packages? All right. The end user experience. Does anybody have anything to bring up in this area? I see that the pull request around automating build instructions using Ansible is still open. Is there anyone who's been involved in that that knows what the state of this is? The last few comments indicate people have been able to successfully build with it. If there's no concerns, I'd like to get that merged. All right, then I will pick that up offline and follow up with a couple of people who've been involved in reviewing that and just make sure it's ready to go, because I think it needs to be merged. Are there any other user-raised issues people want to discuss?
There is still an extended test failure that's failing a lot. Shelley, I think you'd mentioned excluding that failure. Is that still on your radar?
I guess not. I just mentioned someone should probably. I can go look in the Jenkins channel and find it, I guess, if it's happening a lot. It's if it's a test target that's failing that we want to exclude, it's a simple matter of adding a disabled tag in that playlist. So anyone can and should do that, but I can follow up.
I had hoped to exclude just the subtest and not the entire test suite.
Is it a command line test or a test NG test?
Not sure. It's the JVMTI test suite that was recently added. I'm not sure what it's using.
Okay.
I can easily check.
I'll follow up. It wasn't on my radar. I lost it. Thanks.
Just as I look at the user-raised issues, I do see that there was a request to make OpenJ9 available via SDKman, which is a package installer. I've suggested that we'd love to do that once we have the 0.9 release out. So it's something I will be hopefully working with once we get the release completed to get our releases available there. All right. The WordPress blog has been created and we've had our first few blog posts there, and I know there's a few more in the queue. So thank you to all who've been involved in that. If you have ideas for blogs around OpenJ9 that you'd like to share or like to add to that, please reach out to myself or to Shelley, and we'll help you get set up to create content there.
Yeah, I've just to note, I have been slowly adding contributors. Rather than just sending a blanket invite out to everyone, because I think it'll get ignored if it goes out as a blanket invite rather than here's a targeted reason for why you're now being asked to be a contributor. But I'm hoping people don't feel that that's because I'm trying to not have people participate. It's more because I've done it the other way before, and invites tend to go stale. So it looks, yes, we have a bunch of stuff in the queue, which should be rolling out in the next week. And thanks to everyone who's been doing the reviews on the stuff.
Is there any other items that we want to discuss in this section? I'm just being cognizant of time as we're running to our last 6 minutes.
I did have a quick look at the Wikipedia stuff, and it looks relatively straightforward to update, so I'll probably just create an issue somewhere, probably against the website, so that I'm not adding to the queue on OpenJ9, so that we can just talk about what we'd like to see in there, and then I'll have a stab at putting something together for review.
That's great. Thank you, Sue.
And one last thing, there is an option with WordPress to actually tweet out a note when a new content comes onto the blog. So that's something you might want to consider, Dan, or whoever owns the Twitter account for OpenJ9. We can just manually do it for now, I guess, but there is an automated.
That sounds really cool. I'll have to look at how to connect the two of those. We've talked a lot about the pieces for the 0.9 release throughout the other topics. Is there any particular item that we want to talk about right now? Okay, I'm rushing a little bit because I see that in the any other business, Peter has proposed turning off JDK9 builds, and I'd like to have a quick discussion of that. So why don't we jump down to that now? Peter, you want to walk us through the proposal?
Well, I guess we had talked about this last week. The end result was in the pull request builds, we took JDK9 out of the all categories, so that if you ask for all testing, it no longer includes JDK9.
Was there more that needed to be done here?
We could consider turning off JDK9 in the nightly test runs as well. I think we're still running them.
Okay. I guess we should follow up with Adam or check the length of the build queues. If we have machine resources, we may as well keep building it, at least for the time being. If we're starting to run out of resources on that, then we should look at turning it off across the board.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much how we left it last week. I don't think there's any resource problem.
All right.
Although we've had some failures, so maybe all the builds have been failing early, or some of the builds have been failing early, so maybe that's why we don't have resource problems.
All right. I can follow up with Adam and just have a discussion about how resource utilization looks right now, and see where we go from there. All right, we're down to our last sort of 2.5 minutes. Is there any other things people would like to discuss now? All right, then if there's nothing else, I'll say thank you to everybody, and we'll stop the recording now, and we'll meet again next week.